Hey folks, Evil Pajamas here with another Civilization 6 video. It's December 2020, so we're looking forward to the new December update and taking a peek back at the last update that was done in November. So with all the fanfare around the Heroes and Legends mode along with the release of the Babylon Civilization, there were some changes that got pushed through that probably most people didn't take much notice of, but I would like to thank viewer Travis Carter for pointing out one of these changes, and it's a change that I didn't even notice myself, but it was a change to the Gilgamesh leader ability that was sort of buried down in the patch notes. So if you aren't a frequent player of Gilgamesh, you probably would not have noticed the change that was made. It was in the patch notes below the descriptions of all of the heroes. So the patch notes indicate that Gilgamesh had his unique ability, Legacy of Enkidu, tweaked, which is a little bit misleading as well. One, the ability was previously called Adventures of Enkidu, and two, the tweaked is not exactly right because if you look at where it says with Heroes and Legends mode disabled, it's actually missing the portion of the ability that said Gilgamesh doesn't get a warmonger penalty for declaring war on a foe that is already at war with one of his allies. So again, a tweaked is not an inaccurate statement, but they don't really tell you what got removed. Now again, I'll remind you, I did not test this with Heroes and Legends mode off to see if that's actually how it functioned. As far as actually the functioning, I did look at it in terms of the description to see if it changed, and it didn't, but I didn't play Gilgamesh enough to recall if that was always hidden in the description. The more noticeable addition, of course, is the new Heroes and Legends mode ability, which is a 25% production increase from claiming heroes and 20% longer lifespan for heroes. You can see this if you select Gilgamesh on the civilization or leader selection screen and click on and off on that particular mode, Heroes and Legends mode, it will flip between these two abilities. So before we talk about the change, I do want to talk about this in the context of the December update and future updates. And I think the way they went about doing this, about tweaking in a way that changes based upon the rule set, is a great way to do that going forward. And I think that it provides more flexibility and more variety in the leaders without necessarily impacting the game modes for previous content, where if people maybe don't have the newer content or they don't play with some of those modes on, it allows them to balance more specifically around interactions with that particular content. Now, I don't think this is a particularly huge loss for that leader ability if you are playing with Heroes and Legends mode disabled. And that is because this is the way that most people will play Gilgamesh. Here, you can see that the most popular way to play Gilgamesh and the general consensus around what makes Gilgamesh a strong character is simply the war card. And the war card is even says right in the description, this is the strongest starting unit in the game if it's not clear already from looking at the numbers. So people like to just do a war card aggressive rush. So with that said, if you are playing the early game aggressor, you're not going to have allies yet because you're not going to be far enough down on the tree to have an ally, because you need to have certain civics in place to have an allied civilization. So the loss of that is not a particularly big deal for the way that most people play Gilgamesh. Now, my conclusion that it doesn't really make a big impact on the character, I'm a little bit cautious about that maybe I'm missing some style of play that people were abusing with this mechanic, because I can't really see any other reason why they would expressly take that part out in the old mode with Heroes and Legends disabled, because there's nothing that was changed in terms of the game mode, because it's the ability when you are not playing with Heroes and Legends mode. So if there is a particular mechanic that was abusable around that particular component of Gilgamesh's non-Heroes and Legends ability, and you happen to be familiar with it, feel free to please, or I encourage you to share it in the comments below, again, because I am not familiar with it. Now, if you look at his new Heroes and Legends ability, I think that Gilgamesh is largely in the same boat as he was before, where the leader ability is clearly not the reason why people are selecting Samaria. That the war cart is really the reason why that civ is being selected, and the leader ability is just sort of a nice to have. So, a 20% increase on a hero lifespan. I mean that can be good. I mean they start with, I believe, with 30 turn base, so you're gonna get about 6 extra turns out of them. And I know that there are some heroes where I don't get a full chance to maybe use all their charges. Like if I am wandering around with Anansi, trying to look for specific civs to target, or cities to target, or if you were waiting for tribal camps, or I'm sorry, barbarian camps to spawn with Sinbad. Those, it's not like those 6 extra turns are something to scoff at, but they're not anything that's really game changing in terms of strategy. It's just it's a nice to have. The same could be said with the 25% production. I mean, most people are going to get their early hero out in 2 to 4 turns anyway, so that's going to be negligible. Now, your second hero, I think, costs 140 production, so that, I mean, that's a significant reduction, depending on how much production you're getting out of your city. So I think that could be a nice to have if you have got access to a few good heroes at the beginning. So if you stumble upon Hercules or Hamiko, as your second hero, and you've already summoned your other hero, that I think that's useful to speed that up. So again, I do want to thank viewer Travis Carter for pointing out that little change, and I hope that the dev team over at Firaxis, continues to push out tweak changes like this, where you might have um, differing hero abilities depending on the game mode, because that offers them a lot of flexibility, and it's actually sort of like a hidden way to add even more content, because it's essentially two different leaders effectively depending on what game mode you're playing. So if you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing below. Hope to have more Civ 6 content in the future. And anyway, everyone have a great holiday, and Evil Pajamas out.